check that mic with some bullshit while I'm getting all this stuff set up, Casey.
How do you guys feel about that sporting event that happened?
They got robbed.
Right?
Yes, they did.
Right?
Home team.
All of those sports, and none of them for us.
Right, club audience, are you ready for Casey Childers' 20s? Make some noise! Casey Childers, you ready to do this thing?
Yeah, I'll do this thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, count it down with me. Casey Childers with 20 in 3, 2, 1, begin.
Okay, so it's me and every book I'd ever meant to read. And we're mainlining a season of that show with the stiff dialogue that everyone's going bananas over. As the credits roll between episodes, I say, you used to have to buy a box set to watch this much of a show in one sitting. And those were expensive. Plus, people were always saying, man, you must really be into Twin Peaks, or man, you must really be into Newhart. Otherwise, you had to wait for President's Day or something, for a marathon. The books I'd meant to read doesn't say anything. He doesn't really get television, and Netflix baffles him completely. It's not that he thinks he's better than me, it's just that he's actually better than me. It's unnerving. If he wasn't here in the room with me, with the TV so close at hand, he'd probably say, I don't watch TV, or something like that. But his judgmental silence is just as effective. There's some kind of transition here, I think. I'll have to work it out later, but for now it's enough to say, and then it's me and all the meaningless sex I'd meant to have. We're trying to make sense of a sonogram. Make out this hand and forehead the technician keeps talking about, but it's all abstract blobs as far as either of us can see. All the meaningless sex I'd meant to have is skeeved out by the thick layer of lube jelly it takes to make this magic happen, and no amount of reassurance seems to make it better. So I'm just like, isn't this sort of the point? Babies? Maybe, says all the meaningless sex I'd meant to have, but he doesn't seem convinced. The technician is cataloging each piece of the growing baby, labeling fingers and elbows and organs and vertebrae. It's a comprehensive cutaway, like the exploded view of a 1986 Cummins Big Can 3 400 horsepower diesel engine, only, it's like a little person with rice paper skin and bones like a bird of paradise. I talk for both of us, nod for both of us, interpret the blobs on the screen for the both of us. When the technician prints out a wallet-sized wide-angle view of the newly inventoried baby, all the meaningless sex I'd meant to have sighs. You've changed, is what that sigh seems to mean, if I had to guess. And I'm like, of course I have, but that's cool. And then it's me and my buddy 2005, and we stop off to pick up our friend Everything I Wished I'd Known About the Modernists in a case of PBR. And when we get to the party, we're glad it's cold and that we know so few of these assholes. They're all holding plastic cups, wearing hats and scarves, fedoras mostly. They're talking in that way that they talked back then, excited and full of energy and convinced that all the great stuff that's meant for them is loaded on the train and barreling toward the station. They make mission statements. They boldly proclaim their favorites, their solutions, and their theories. They discuss their passions at length. Everything I wished I'd known about the modernists laughs awkwardly to cover his ignorance of Fitzgerald's antics and the beauty of a movable feast, touching his glasses often, looking down often, saying, seriously, with a question mark, often. At the mention of Zelda, he forgets himself and sort of mumbles his way through a story about spilling Pepsi on his cousin's Nintendo back in Flagstaff, and all the fedoras just hover in space for a moment, sharpening their teeth for the kill. 2005 hands me a beer, and we just sort of watch Everything I Wished I'd Known About the Modernists sputter around and blush with embarrassment. We feel bad and all, but it's not like we can drop in and save him. We're just as worthless as this shit as he is. 2005 is a townie in a blank decade stuck in a nowhere suburb with a shit job. Me, I dress poorly, and I need a haircut. On the ride back, 2005 tells me I really shouldn't be driving, and I say, yeah, I know, but it's cool, and it really isn't. And everything I wished I'd known about the modernists looks tiny in the rear view, and I try for a long time to find something useful and funny to say to make him feel better. But my brain's a mess at this point, and I probably wouldn't make any difference anyway. So I put on that album by that band that was better before and will be better again, but kind of disappoints right now, and I turn it up loud, and we pretend we love it just as much as we'd hoped we would all along. The next morning, it's just me and all the stuff I jotted down on a napkin or scrap of paper or palm of my hand and meant to get to later that makes no sense when I come back to it. And I just drink or jack off instead of trying to write something. He's been sleeping on my couch for years. He's messy, antisocial, and allergic to employment. Here, he says, handing over a Denny's placemat. It's covered in crayon scribbles, a half-completed maze, and 3 rounds of tic-tac-toe where circle slaughters X in the exact same pattern each time. I flip it over once or twice, hoping it'll come back to me. He's like, you were on fire last night, man. Check that shit out. Fire. It doesn't come back to me. Just a bunch of squiggles and a syrup stain that looks like a Q. This isn't working out, I say. I think it's time for you to move out. And I called around. Every bad decision I made while shit hammered on tequila said you could crash at his place until you find something better. He nods. He'll still be here when I get home, but it feels nice to put my foot down in the moment. Then it's me and all the science I'd hoped to understand by now. And we're flipping through the remaindered poetry bin at the old abandoned Barnes & Noble. They say it's haunted. We're talking hypercubes, tesseracts to be specific, and I'm all right. It's like how tequila is a type of mezcal. And he's like, no, you're not getting it. It's the stupid little shortcuts you take to getting the gist of stuff that keep you from ever really understanding anything. I nod, but my mind's elsewhere, trying to break apart the notion of the quantum mind, of slices of discrete consciousness piled up to give the sense of continuity, like a zoetrope maybe, and then its malleability of memories, how they're constantly being revised as they're being recalled, making eyewitnesses bad witnesses, making everyone believe their own lies, making the entire decade into a pile of discrete slices of consciousness and leaving you with nothing but a faulty recollection of the whats and the whens, a pair of old man's hands, 20 extra pounds, and a handful of unattributed quotes to pass off as original thought. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about, he says. You need to start with the math or you sound like a fucking idiot, which makes no sense to me and most likely never will. Thank you.